I'm Elizabeth Pastor, as Donna introduced me. I'm the visual sense making coach of the Academy, and I'm based in New York. And basically, I'm one of the partners at Humantific. And if we want to, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be showing you as I'm drawing some of these things. So let's start that. So a little fun, since we're talking about visualization, I thought it would be a little bit fun to do this. And I'm kind of lucky that I have a glass table. Never thought about this before, but hey, I'm gonna try it so I can use whiteboard markers. So if you have a glass table at home, this is a great way for you to practice. Get some whiteboard markers, and you can use it this way. So as I said, I'm the visual sense making coach. I'm a partner at Humantific, which is a company. We are based in New York City, and our tagline is sense making for change making. So we are in the sense making business. And what we do is we help our clients who are dealing with complex challenges to make sense of that complexity, create new insights that help them figure out what do they want to do as they move forward and create change. And that in itself creates value. So that's sort of how we think about the world. We have clients all over the place, from Fortune 100, 500, medium, small, foundations, nonprofits, universities. Like one example, we're working right now with Pfizer on a bunch of projects here in the city. And teaching at a university in Madrid on an innovation master's program. So, a lot of variety. We're not industry experts. And I think one of the things that we're going to talk about today is some skills that you can apply to anything, which makes them very adaptable. And we want to think about how do we apply this skill to the virtual collaboration space that we are all trying to kind of work on and figure out how to do in a better way. I'm going to just tell you a little bit about visual sense making, and then I'll jump into some little tips with an example. So what is visual sense making? So if I think about the first word sense making is really all about understanding, creating understanding around a situation. And the way we kind of think about it, if I do a little quick sketch, is I have a big mess. And to do that, to create understanding and make sense of it, we are basically taking it apart, untangling all the components, all the parts. And this helps us sort of unpack into smaller pieces so we can make sense of them. So all this work is, it's about ordering, organizing. It's, like I said, untangling, deconstructing. These are sort of words I like to use. It's really thinking in systems, right? So it's thinking in systems, or systems thinking. And that means that I'm thinking about categories of things, categories meaning, if I'm looking at all these things, what's the same, what's different, are they all the same types? And you can think about those things as also as buckets of information. What kind of things are there? So are all these apples? In the States, we use that analogy a lot. Are they all apples, oranges, bananas? So you're thinking about those things. And as you're untangling this mess, you're seeing different things. You're looking at categories and you're seeing things that relate to this category. This might be an apple, banana, an orange. So that is really sort of at the level of sense making and thinking. It's the thinking skill. It helps you understand things. Now, if you think about the visual component says, okay, great. Now that you've done this, how could I visualize it in a way that makes it easier for people to understand? So we're getting into, it helps me understand it, but it also helps me communicate it. So if you think about a lot of the work that you're doing when you're doing virtual collaboration, communication is a huge component of that. So as an example, I might start thinking, what does this mean, or what are these elements? And I'm going to start creating little icons so this is just a quick example. I might be, there's two people and there's information, and maybe there's an issue about how they're sharing the information. And here's where we have a little problem. So if I look at this simple, very quick diagram that I just did very quickly, this might be a component of this complexity. And basically, these are the two skills that we're talking: ordering, organizing, and visualizing. These are the skills that we teach. That we teach in the workshop. We usually like to draw them in sort of in a continuous manner. That you organize something, you visualize it, and it's iterative and complementary. So that means that I'm not just doing one and then I organize and then I visualize. You do have to start organizing, but then you kind of go back and forth. Now, what's interesting about this is that if you think about the visual world, humans understand the world. 80% of how we understand it is visually. So we really want to think about this when we are having all sorts of interactions. How do I make this easier for people to understand? How do I visualize it? If I were to, all this information that I have here, I could all write it down, right? It could be all these words. That means I have to read this, understand it, make sense of it. I can do that, but what if I then start thinking about shapes of the connections of something like I just did up here? So I'm starting to understand that there's connections between them. But if you think about what we see here, which is the next level, would be the humanizing things. My brain doesn't really have to. I look at it, I see two people, I see information, and then I can get into the detail. So I'm accelerating our processing power as humans. So a lot of this work, I think about it as humanizing things, and this is really important. Now, this is a very simple example, but when you have really something complex, the idea that I can actually do this and figure out where, what the people are, what the information is, it helps me think about my problem in a much faster way and an easier way. Now, so this is a little bit about what visual sense making is and the skills. Now I want to go over some tips that I hope will be useful for you as you start to work collaboratively with teams virtually. So there's a few tips, and I'm going to use an example. I'm going to use an example to see if this helps you understand things, apply them. So this is an example where it's a real example. I was trying to think of what would be a good example. And yesterday I was actually having a conversation with two friends, and one of them is in Madrid. I'm from Madrid, and she has a clothing store. And, given with everything that is going on with the coronavirus, she's basically, her store is shut down, and she's got a lot of issues, a lot of challenges. So we were trying to help her think through this. So she was telling us a whole bunch of things about it. And one of the first tips that I'm going to tell you is, and basically what I'm saying is, I said to her, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you have a session. We're going to work together on this. And now as I get myself organized to do that, there's certain things that I can do. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to make sure that I'm gathering using physical materials. And this is very simple. It sounds very simple, like pen, paper, markers, right? Post-its, all the things that you see that I have around here. I have all these things. I even have paper. We're all very used to the computer, which is great. It's so useful in so many ways. But we've forgotten sometimes that, hey, how about just having nice old-fashioned paper where I can write things, I can organize them, I can see them, I can put them next to each other. And it's also it's also a different way that our mind works. So when I'm trying to think things through, I actually find that the physicality of things really helps me. So that's a very simple first step. It's very simple, but I find that most people don't do that. They just go right into the computer when they need to do anything, and they just start typing bullet points on PowerPoint. So this is a sort of an opportunity to step back and do that. So I have that done. I'm organized that way. The second part is that we want you to write things down, like all the things that are popping up in your head. You want to write them down. We want to capture them. We want to externalize our thinking. So right now I'm preparing myself. So I'm trying to think about all the things in my head, all the things that maybe I spoke to this friend of mine, and I'm going to write them down. I want to write everything that she's told me, everything, and all the things that I know about this problem. And this is something you'd also do, is very important when you're working with other people, that we're not just having these conversations that are just going from our brain back and forth, but we want to make it more action oriented. And more action oriented is that I'm writing everything down because I'm going to be able to point to it after. I'm going to be able to look back after and see, and this is going to help me understand and really think about the elements. So that's the second tip that I'm going to give you. And the third tip is that we are going to start organize and synthesize all this information. And that means that I'm going to look at all this information and say, so you remember before I was talking about categories, what is all this information? So I know, and obviously if I was doing this, I would write it out, but I'm just trying to give you quickly a sense of what it is. I know that she told me a bunch of things that have to do with physical stores. She has a physical store, and now it's closed, and she has some challenges there. She also told me a lot about her customers. So there's a bunch of information, different information here about her customers, and she has different types of customers. She was telling us things about how they behave, how they do certain things. She's got competitors that are doing different parts that she was talking about. We also have inventory, all the inventory that she has in her store, and there's a lot of issues about the fact that she doesn't have all the information about them and the prices and there's also stuff about the designers that actually, her designers that she carries in her store that are connected to this inventory, as well as the online channel as a channel to sell and to potentially think about. So my first pass, so now I've started to organize things, right? I've done this quickly. If I was in doing reality and I had a lot of things that would be complicated, I would probably be like, this is the physical store. I'd probably be thinking, hey, what are all these things about? And then I would actually think about, yeah, the physical store. Then I take another color pen and think about what are all the things about customers. So this is like all the things that I'm seeing. I'm doing analysis and synthesis of all the information, and I'm coming up with these categories. And now we're going to go to the fourth tip, which is visualizing. So visualize and create thinking frameworks through that visualization. Thinking frameworks. I think, thinking frameworks are really terrific when you're trying to get people together and to help them think together, because it's like a starting ground for them to do that. So here, my first step is that I could visualize all these things, right? The customers, their people, I write people, a physical store. I'm going to do a simple little drawing of a building, and I'm not being fancy. Competitors are probably also other little buildings. So I'm going to do a few of them. Inventory, she has a clothing store, so I'm just going to do like a t-shirt, just signifies what it is. Designers are the designers that are designing these items, clothing, and online channel. I'm probably just going to do a little symbol of a website, right, that shows something like that. So that's my first pass. This is how I'm thinking about it. And now I'm thinking, okay, how do I get ready for this meeting that I'm going to have with her? We want to collaborate. I'm going to have several people. So I'm going to try to use these elements here, and I'm going to sort of like blow them up a little bit. So let me actually erase this now. I'm going to redraw it. And I'm trying to give you some quick tips, simple tips that you can take with you. In the session, in the program, we go into a lot of detail into some of these parts. We talk about universe diagrams where we connect these pieces together. That's a little bit more advanced. So at a very simple level, what are the things that I can do? And I just move this a little bit. Is say, okay, if I was in a meeting, I'm going to put a little line here, and I'm going to work I'm going to work to help her to think about how so her challenge, we adapt, or I adapt, how might we adapt my business, right, to a new reality. So this is what would be my top challenge that we're working on. And now I'm going to think all these players that are part of that we just visualized. So first thing we said, hey, we have our store, our physical store. So it's my store. I have my customers. And like I said, she told me she has different types of customers. So I'm just kind of like, I might even say A, B, C. Then we have inventory. It's one of the elements that she was talking about. It's a little t-shirt. That's my inventory. And then we have the designers that are, designing part of my connect to my inventory, the things that I sell. I also have competitors that I'm thinking about, right? Competitors. And I might actually draw several of them because there's probably not more than one. And the other thing was the online channel. See, if I had done this in a piece of paper, I would be able to go back and say, hey, did I miss anything, right? So that's what happens when you erase things. And it's the same thing that happens when we have conversations. We say things and we forget about them. So that's why it's really important to write everything down and have it and externalize that. And probably there's also market forces, right? Market forces are things that are going on in the environment. All right, these market forces, and those could be very different. Right now, COVID is a really important thing that's happening. It's not a market force, but it's a reality. So in my session, if I were to start my session, one great thing that I would do is to actually draw this and have it as the main framework that I would put up there. I would probably draw this nicely, nicely or like this, and I would put up as the first thing that I have on the screen, like you see it right now, right? Not the top one, obviously, but the bottom part, and that we would say, hey, these are the main players that we've talked about. Is there anybody else that's missing? And then as a group, we would start talking about them. And then we would start to actually write all the things that we know, all the facts and the challenges that we have, that we know about these people. And this is a really nice way, an organized way to get us to untangle this challenge that we have, which, you know, most of the time, there's a lot of things that have to do with all the people that are interacting in this world. And this is, you know, and when you have a lot of conversations, and I think this happens even more sometimes virtually, is that people are sort of mixing them all the time. They're saying one thing about one, they're like jumping up. So this helps us, even if they're jumping, I can say, okay, great, I'm going to capture that. I'm going to put that, that's about online channel. I'm going to put it here. So, you know, from the beginning, we are having a nice framework to help us do that. So again, just to review our tips, remember, use the materials, get out of the computer to get you thinking about what you're going to do. Write things down, externalize things, start organizing, thinking about what's the same, what's different, what kind of buckets and categories make sense, and then start visualizing and creating thinking frameworks to help the team do that. And that's it for me.